Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this short LibreOffice Writer tutorial, I'd like to show you how to use wizards and templates within the program. So, wizards and templates can be found in the File menu that's in the top left-hand corner of LibreOffice Writer. And if we scroll down a bit past New, Open, and Close to Wizards and Templates, that's where they are located at. As you can see, templates also have a shortcut, Control-Shift and N at the same time in order to access the templates. But before we go ahead and try one of these out, the difference between wizards and templates. Templates basically give you a dummy document which have fields of information which have been given fake information to, and you can edit that information, replace it with your own or your company's. So, for instance, if it has name listed somewhere, it might say first name, last name. You replace that with your first name and last name. But the real purpose of the template is to basically set you up with a pre-formatted document so that a lot of the grunt work about laying things out and making it look nice is already done for you. With a wizard, it basically will present you with a list of steps to go through, and as you fill out those steps, it's going to be automatically filling information in the background. Basically, the wizard is creating a template as you fill in the fields for these 6 or 7 or so steps. And then at the end of those steps, you can save that as a template and edit it as if it was a template. So let's go ahead and start off with a letter wizard. Clicking there. Basically, we'll pull up this new template document and give us 6 steps that we can fill out. So, for instance, the first step is choosing the page design. Do we want this letter to be formatted as a business letter, a formal personal letter, or a informal personal letter? I suppose we'll go ahead and use it as a page design business letter, and maybe we'll change this back to elegant. As you can see, the difference here is that it changed the header a little bit for us, and I like that. So we can go to the next step, select the items to be printed. You can choose for basically all these things on the page whether or not you want them to show in your letter. So for instance, if you have a logo, you can check logo, and then you can change the logo later on. If for some reason you don't want a subject line, you can uncheck that, and the subject basically gets removed from the letter. Likewise, you can remove the footer as well. Kind of up to you which aspects of the document you want. Next is recipient and sender. You can specify a new sender address and basically manually type in the information for your address, as I've kind of done here beforehand. Or you can use the user data for a return address. That's something you can set up within LibreOffice, and then basically as you're logged in as the user, Chris or whoever you are, it'll basically just take your default information and put it there. So that's kind of useful as well. With recipient address, you can either use placeholders as seen here, or you can use the address database within OpenOffice. But we'll get into that in a future video. So we'll just use placeholders for recipient address for now. Okay, then there's the footer information. You can put whatever you want here. I've just got a copyright down here, and this isn't a real copyright, by the way. That's just some random information that I wanted to type there in order to demonstrate this. And you can choose if you want to include the page number or to include the footer only on the second and following pages, as in remove it from the first page. It's up to you. Finally, step 6 is to save the template, essentially. So you can specify a template name. Chris template, let's go with that. Location and file name for the template, which you can bring up in a dialog. Save as dialog specifically. And then finally, do you want to create a letter from this template, or do you want to make manual changes to this letter template? So if you make changes to the template, then you're editing what creating new letters out of this template is going to be like in the future. Basically, this is a base. Do you want to create a letter from the base that doesn't edit the base, or do you want to edit the base so that it changes all future letters? Hope that makes a little bit of sense. We'll just create a letter from this template here, hit finish. Okay, actually, one thing to note is if you already have a template there, you want to change the save name. so that you don't accidentally overwrite an old one. So that's taken care of. But yeah, we'll go ahead and create a letter from this template. Okay, save the template. And now we have a base letter that's basically already been formatted for us. The main thing is that all these sections have been predefined. And all we need to do is edit them with our own information. So next up, we're going to go into templates for LibreOffice Writer. You can find templates once again in the file menu or hitting Control-Shift-N on your keyboard. So manage, and as you can see, if you already have a document that's open, you can save that as a template that you can open and edit in the future without basically editing the original document. So manage here to look at your templates, and here I'll go back to the all templates folder so that you can see all that are available to you. You got 4 categories here: documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and draw. This actually refers to the 4 or 5 different parts of the LibreOffice suite. So documents are going to be opened in LibreOffice Writer. Spreadsheets are for Calc. Presentations are for Inspire, I believe it's called. And then drawings are for LibreOffice Draw. But here we're going to focus on LibreOffice Writer. So these templates are basically dummy documents that we can open up and edit within LibreOffice Writer. So for instance, a business correspondence, kind of like a letter that we were creating in the wizard. We can select one of these templates, let's say modern business letter. Go ahead, double click it to open it up as a new document using that template. And you can see we have a lot of these different dummy fields that we would need to edit before we actually send it forth as a final letter that's actually basically ready to be received by the business recipient. But basically, it's already pre-formatted for you. All you need to do, type your letter down here, put in your information, your company name, double-click the image here to put in your own logo, and set the information for your recipient as well. Change your date, and start typing, finishing it off with your name again at the bottom. And basically, the idea here is that it saves you a lot of time. So if you want to create a letter, and maybe you're not the best at formatting letters, or you just want to get something done quickly, you can use a template, one that you've already created or one that someone else has created, in order to get a head start on creating your letter. So it's a time saver. Now, one last thing about templates. If we go back to templates and manage, you can actually get more templates from offline by hitting this Get More Templates for LibreOffice button. So I'll go ahead and hit that here. And it brings us to templates.libreoffice.org. So here we can see extensions and templates. Extensions are kind of like plugins or modifications for the LibreOffice suite itself, but templates are basically documents that we can edit and use for our LibreOffice documents. So categories, we could say budget templates, and then we're going to get a huge drop-down list of budget templates that we can download and add to LibreOffice Writer. And this is probably kind of important to you because although there are a few templates inside of LibreOffice Writer by default, really most of them and a lot of the good ones are going to be located online. So go ahead, check out templates.libreoffice.org if you're looking for some other ones, and you can get there from the templates manager just by hitting this button over here on the right. So that's the basics of using the wizard and templates inside of LibreOffice Writer. I hope this helped you out. I've been Chris. Thank you for watching. Feel free to check out my Patreon, and I'll see you in my future videos. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this short LibreOffice Writer tutorial, I'd like to show you how to create a bulleted or a numbered list. So the first thing you're going to want to do, if you don't already have some information prepared beforehand, is go up to the formatting toolbar. That's this one on the bottom by default that has these drop-down menus. Scroll over and look to the right of highlight color where you have bullets on or off, or numbering on and off. What bullets on and off will do is create a bulleted list, no numbering involved, so by default that's going to be a circle, and numbering on and off will create a numbered list. Alternatively, if you don't like the defaults, for instance the little circle for the bulleted list, you can click on the drop-down menu from the same location and use one of the other bulleted lists, clicking on more bullets if you want to find even more options. But for instance, we can use a diamond bullet instead of a dot. And once we have that set up, the cursor is going to be automatically placed to the right of our first bullet. So we can go ahead and start typing in information for our list. So I'm going to put list item 1 here, just kind of generic information. And once you are complete with your first bullet, all you need to do is hit enter on your keyboard and it will automatically add the next bullet. So now we can start typing in the second bullet item and the third one and so on. Now, once you are actually done with your bulleted list and you want to continue with your document as normal, just hit enter on the next bullet item without actually typing anything in. So enter, and it returns us to default paragraph typing. So let's go ahead and do one for the numbered list as well. Click on numbering on and off, and you'll notice for these two that there are actually shortcuts. You can hit F12 on your keyboard or Shift F12 if you want bullets instead. So I'm going to hit just F12 on our keyboard to create a numbered list. Like before, you can of course style it differently. And yeah, so let's go ahead and start typing in some information. Maybe a moose, a chicken. But then we get to the third item, and we actually want a nested list item. So when you're typing a bulleted list and you want to have something on the next level of the list, basically like a child member of, let's say, this chicken item right here, hit tab from the new bulleted item, and it will basically put it on the second level of this numbered list. So maybe a chicken is a bird and it has feathers. And then I go to the third item, and we can even make it a third level of the list by hitting tab again. So let's go ahead and add something in, like a chicken can have yellow feathers, and I guess a chicken can also have red feathers as well. But you'll notice that with this list, every level of it kind of is the same because it's got the same formatting, the number and then a dot, and then the number and a dot. That's actually a little bit confusing to look at. So what we can actually do is when you have any area of one of the levels selected, like I'm clicking here, the cursor's on bird, which is on level 2, we can change the formatting of just that level by going up to the drop-down menu and changing it to something else. So a common way would be to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the first level, and then make it A, B, C, and D for the second level. So I'll go ahead and click that there. And now the first level, every item is numbered, but the second level, it's basically listed in an alphabetical order. And we can go to the third level and do the exact same thing. So maybe we go to Roman numbers here, and now every level, each of the 3 levels of our list, is different enough from each other that you know which one you're looking at without even taking into account the tabs. So let's go back to the bulleted list, and I'll show you that we can do exactly the same thing there. And by default, I guess it already kind of does that for you. But you hit tab, it brings you to the second level of the list. And we can say second level. Likewise, if you want to change whatever symbol it's using, we can do that with the drop-down list. So maybe we make that arrows. Then we hit enter and tab again, and we get to the third level and the fourth level. And you can basically carry this on indefinitely. So that's a quick rundown of using bulleted and numbered lists inside of LibreOffice Writer. I've been Chris. I hope this helped you out, and if it did, feel free to check out my Patreon and cast me a couple shekels. Aside from that, I'll see you in my future videos. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'd like to show you how you can add new fonts to LibreOffice Writer. So by default, you have a bunch of fonts which you can set your text to over here in the font name dropdown, like Adobe Gothic Standard Bold, for instance. But what happens if you went through all of these and you haven't been able to find one that you actually are interested in? Well, you can go online and find new fonts to install. For instance, defont.com has a large selection of free fonts that are available to you, and you can download any of these and install them to your computer. So,
For instance, let's say we like this lemon milk font. We like how it's laid out, we like how it's pretty clean and also bold. So I'll hit the download button and you'll see that we get a zip file. We want to open that up with our program of choice. I like to use 7-zip. And you're going to be looking for a .otf file. In some cases it might say something like .ttf, but you'll know it's a font file, at least in Windows, because it'll be represented by the symbol over here on the left. Like with the little A, that's basically the icon for font file. So we want to double click that, open it up, and we'll get the basically font browser type pop-up. And we can look through the font, see how it looks in each font size, and we can also hit the install button. And once we do that, it's going to install this font to our system. Couldn't be any easier in Windows. So now we can go ahead and look for that font. I believe it was called, Lemon Milk. So we have the font and it's installed, and LibreOffice already knows it's there. So all we need to do now is to select some of our text and change the font. So one way is just to search through it by starting to type it in. Let's use the Lemon Milk font. And just like that, it's added into LibreOffice Writer and all the other applications on our computer that would use fonts. Very simple, but also very handy. So I've been Chris. Thank you for watching. If this did help you out, feel free to check out my Patreon, and I'll see you in my future videos.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this short LibreOffice Writer video, I'd like to show you how to edit toolbars to have additional buttons, how to remove toolbars, add them to your interface, and also to move them around. So a toolbar is referring to these little visual elements that are represented by about 5 dots, and a horizontal or vertical list of drop-down menus or buttons that are available for you to click on for easy access to LibreOffice Writer functions. So they're incredibly useful, but you may only want to have a handful displaying on the screen at a single time. So with these toolbars, we can move them around by left-clicking on the 5 dots and then dragging the toolbar to whatever part of the screen we want. For instance, I can put them on the same line. I can move them to the left side of the screen, the bottom, and so on. But if I want to customize a toolbar fully, I instead right-click on the 5 dots and go down to Customize Toolbar, which will bring you to the Customize window, the Toolbars tab. And here I can add in new buttons using the Add option. And with Add, I can use these basically nested lists to find just about every option available inside of LibreOffice Writer. Just about anything that can be applied to a button will be able to be found here somewhere within the menus. It can get kind of complicated, so this is something you should only do if you're quite advanced, but there you go, just in case you needed to know that. Now, if you want to enable or disable the toolbars, you simply go up to the View menu, look for Toolbars, and then any toolbar that has a check mark, you can disable by left-clicking on the fully highlighted menu item. And if you go back to the toolbars, you can enable toolbars in the same way by left-clicking on them. And they may appear at different locations on your screen, but you can once again drag and drop them to wherever you ultimately want them. So that's about all there is to toolbars inside of LibreOffice Writer. I've been Chris. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, consider donating to my Patreon account, and I'll see you in my next video. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you some tricks about using tables within LibreOffice Writer. So first things first, if you want to insert a table into your document, you would go up to the Table menu and hit Insert Table. Alternatively, on this main toolbar, you have Insert Table directly there. Hitting Control and F12 simultaneously on your keyboard is another option for inserting a table. When you click on Insert Table, or you go basically up there to the menu, it's going to ask you how many rows and how many columns you want to add. So here we can see a visual representation of that. Columns go left to right, so 4 columns, 5 columns, 6 columns, and rows go top to bottom. So here we have 3 columns, 4 columns, 5 columns. Let me switch to the insert table from the menu interface, and you'll see that it brings up a insert dialog instead. But effectively it works the same. So 5 columns, that would mean left to right, and then 5 rows would mean top to bottom. You combine those two attributes and you get 5 times 5 for a total of 25 cells. So let's go ahead and insert this table right here. And now you can see all of our cells that we can work with. They've been equally divided based on the size of the table. If we ever want to add additional rows into this table, one option is to go and left click right on the far left side of the table. And then we can right click, go to insert, and rows above or rows below. Likewise, you can do the same thing with columns. But if you're going to insert columns, you probably want to select from the top. So you're selecting the table column, then you go to insert, columns left, columns right. Once again, you right click to bring up this insert menu. And so there we've inserted one column, and we've also inserted one row for a total of 36 cells. So let's go ahead and type in a little bit of information to the cells of our table. And let's say that we wanted the first row of this table to basically be a header row. So it wants to have some different traits to it, like a background color. Well, by selecting the row specifically, we can modify only this row of the table. So we could go up here to table contents, and we might be able to say change it to a heading 2. So now all of the cells inside of this row are going to be basically using the heading 2 style, whereas the rest of the table is styled differently. Likewise, we could select it and go down here to the menu bar that's basically in the bottom, the table menu that only shows while you have a table selected. Go over to background color, and then choose a color that we'd like for the background, such as light blue or gray or something of that nature. And then that basically clearly defines that this heading of the table is quite different than the rest of the table. Now, if you ever want to select the entire table all at once, you can go to the top left-hand corner and left click, which selects every single cell in the table. Alternatively, if you have any part of the table selected, you can just hit select table down on the table bar. So let's try that out, and you basically get the same result. Just like any other part of your document, you can take these cells and determine the text alignment. So you might not want it to be left aligned, you might want it to be centered, or maybe you want part of it left aligned, but then you want the heading to be centered. So you can select the heading by left clicking on the row and then going to center horizontally. Let's say that you wanted some of your cells to be wider or larger than the other ones. Well, you can modify the entire column's width by selecting over here on this border and left clicking, dragging and dropping it to where you want it. And what it does is basically takes some of the space from these columns over here and adds it to this one, or more specifically the one right to the right of the column that we just increased. Now let's say with our remaining columns that we wanted it to be evenly distributed in terms of width, because we didn't want to just make this one large and this one small, but we wanted to make this one a little bit larger than all of these, but we wanted these to be equal in size. Well, we can modify all of these 5 columns over here to the right simultaneously by left clicking in the top left hand cell and dragging and dropping until we get to the bottom right hand corner. So now we have all 25 of these cells selected, or is that 26? Whatever. And now if we want to distribute all the cells equally, we can go down here to optimize size, left click it, and look for where it says distribute columns evenly. Left click that, and the size of all these 5 remaining columns has been equalized using up the remaining space contained in these 5 columns. So they're all identical essentially now. If at the end of creating our table we decide that we don't actually need this last row, so we have content and all the other cells but this last one, because it turns out we made the table a little bit too big, we can simply left click on the left of that final row and either right click to bring down the drop down menu for delete and select rows to delete the selected rows, or we can left click to select that row and go down here to the table menu bar, hit delete rows, and that will do the exact same thing. One really cool thing you can do specifically with tables is to delete all of the text inside of them without actually deleting the rows and cells. So if we select all of these cells in the bottom row here, and we simply hit the backspace button on our keyboard, it deletes the text inside of them, but it leaves the cells completely alone. Likewise, if we want to delete the whole table, we can't actually do that by simply selecting everything and hitting backspace. That only gets rid of the content inside. So if we want to delete the table, what we actually need to do is select the whole table, right-click, go to delete, and then table. Okay, now let's do a quick, more realistic example using tables. Here we have a column for money, where in January, 2 money was coming into our business, February 5 money, and March 4 money. Now, this is all well and good. It's kind of makes sense, but the problem is on the money column, these cells are only saying 2. It's not specifying what kind of currency you have it in, and it's not specifying any decimals, which would be important if, say, you were using the dollar. So what we can do is with these 4 cells, because this total cell is going to be basically a dollar value as well, we can select these cells by left-clicking and dragging on them, go down here to the table menu bar and hit number format currency, which will immediately take any of the money we have there and convert it into a $ amount. Now finally, one more thing here. We could manually add up these values, $2 plus $7 plus $4 for a total of 11, but an alternate trick that you can do within tables is to use a summing function. So in this last cell, what we're going to do is we're going to have it automatically add up the amount of money from these 3 cells, and we can do that by going down here to where it says sum. So make sure that you have this cell selected with your cursor, go to sum, and now we're going to specify which cells are basically going to be the input for that sum. And LibreOffice is so smart that it's already figured out which cells those are. So it's B2 plus B3 plus B4. You can, of course, manually type things in and specify larger ranges than this, but this is a pretty basic example, and it's set it up for us. So we can go ahead and hit apply, and now it's going to automatically calculate the amount of money from these 3 cells and add it up to the 4th one down here. Now even cooler is because this is being calculated by a function. If we change one of the values up here, like the January money, to say 8, and then we click away from that cell, it's going to automatically update the total, which is really useful when you get into more complicated tables by saving you a lot of work. So this has been a pretty brief introduction to LibreOffice tables. I hope you learned something here. I have been Chris. Thank you for watching. Feel free to check out my Patreon, and I'll see you in my future videos. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this LibreOffice Writer tutorial, I'd like to show you how to integrate images into your document. So the easiest way to add an image is to go up to the main toolbar next to where it says Insert Table, and click on Image. It's very recognizable because the background kind of looks like a painting. Alternatively, you can go up to Insert and Image from the main menu, which will bring you to the exact same dialog window called Insert Image, where you can basically go through your computer and network drives and select any image that matches one of these standard formats. As you can see, just about every image format in existence is out there. Choose it, hit open, and it will be inserted into your document. You can see a few different things here, including an anchor point and these green boxes, which are things you can click on in order to scale the image up or down depending on your needs. So for instance, we can take the bottom right hand corner, left click it and hold it, and scale it towards the top left, thus reducing the image size. And you can see that the ratio of the image is kept in check without hitting any additional buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and scale that down there. And by doing that, the image is no longer equal to the size of the document. Basically, larger documents or larger images are automatically going to be scaled down to the document, so it fits within the content. But here it's been scaled down further than that, and it's now wrapping with the text. That's because optimal page wrap is selected up here on the frame toolbar. And we can choose a different page wrap if we happen to want it. For instance, page wrap off will make it so that text will just basically go to the next line wherever the image is. The text is going to try to avoid that and go on the lines above and below it. You can also choose wrap through, which is interesting because the text will now essentially completely ignore the image, and the image will just be there as a separate entity altogether. Like text, it's also possible to use alignment tools to position your image on the document. So the relation between the anchor point and the image itself is that the image is positioned on the page with reference to the anchor point. So right now, in the background, this image is something like 150 pixels over to the right and 100 pixels down from the anchor point. So if I move the anchor point, the image is going to move likewise, but it's going to maintain the same distance from the anchor point. A quicker way to use the anchor point would basically be to position the image immediately above or below it, and we can use that using these anchor tools: align top to anchor, middle to anchor, or bottom to anchor. Top to anchor means that the very top of the image is aligned with the anchor. Likewise, we also have the align middle to anchor and align bottom to anchor tools. So with images and other drawn elements inside of LibreOffice Writer documents, we can control at which order they will display on the page. So we can have certain elements hide behind, say, this image, or put certain image elements in front of the image. It also works with other images that are stacked on top of each other. So in order to use this, we have these controls: bring to front, forward one, back one, and send to back available to us. If I hit send to back with the image selected, though, you'll notice that it doesn't hide behind the text. So these controls do not interact with the text directly. But if we go to insert in the menu bar, shape, and let's say insert a rectangle into our document, drawing it here, and then we take this rectangle and we hit send to back, it's going to appear behind the image. So you could use that for basically kind of like collage style things, or to add sort of a fake background or shadow to a box, whatever you can come up with. Likewise, we can take the image and hit send to back so the rectangle's in front. And then we can go to insert, shape, line, freeform line, and draw more things on top of those other things. So really, you can kind of actually use a Writer document as your own drawing canvas if that's what you want to do. One more option available to you with images inside of LibreOffice Writer is the ability to add borders. So with this drop-down menu, we can select borders on each side of the image, or just a single side. But here I'll go ahead and choose borders for all sides. As you can see, it adds a little black line around it, which we can modify with the next option, border style. Perhaps we want it to be a dotted border. That's perfectly fine, and we can do that. We can also change border color, for instance, changing it to pink. And we can add a background color, which will kind of show mostly on this border here, because this is a completely solid image, but you'll be able to see kind of what I'm talking about there. So now it's a border with a background of green, and it's pink dots. Probably not what you'd go by for standard, but the options are there available to you if you want them. Taking a lesson out of many photo editing apps, you can also play around with filters on your images in LibreOffice Writer. So if we click this filter drop-down marked by the sparkly wand, we can apply things like inverting color, which is kind of interesting in some ways. We can choose relief, which will basically take a lot of the information away, make it kind of black and white, and depending on where you position the light source, it may look kind of like a tombstone style. So if we go up here and do that, it basically stripped out all the color, and it's much more like a bevel shape, because all the elements, instead of just having color, actually have some visual depth to them now. One of the most useful tools is going to be cropping images. So if you want to remove the top or the bottom, the left or the right of your document, instead of manipulating the green boxes for controlling the size, you hit crop image and you're given these red rectangles. So if I click on the top of this image now with the centered red box and I take it down, it's actually going to cut off the top portion of my image. Likewise, I can do it with the bottom, I can do it with the right side, I can do it with the left side, And yeah, that's one way to shrink your image without shrinking each individual element on the image. And it's also possible to rotate your image 90 degrees at a time by hitting rotate left or hitting rotate right. If you'd like to make your image fade into the background a little bit, you can give it some transparency here with this transparency box. For instance, if I give it a 50% transparency, then the image itself should be 50% see-through. As you can see though, the background color does interact with this. So although the image itself is 50% transparent, the background color is not. It's still 100% transparent. So we can remove the background color by going over there, and now that the image no longer has a background color, you can see that we can see the text appear behind the image since our image is almost acting like glass now. Finally, we have the ability to play around with the coloring of the image. So I will go ahead and remove the transparency there. And if we want to make our image more red, we can say add 50% red or 33% green. We can make it brighter by increasing that number as a percent. And we can add contrast to our image so that the visual elements that are displaying are distinctly more different from each other. Though you wouldn't be able to see it very well by increasing the contrast here because it's already so uniform with those filters enabled. The last control we have available to us is gamma. By increasing the gamma towards a infinite positive number, it's going to make the image incredibly bright, almost as if you had the sun flashing straight onto it. And if we remove gamma, let's say drop it all the way down to 0.10, then the colors are going to be very vivid, and in a way it does darken it as well. So that's a quick run through of images and all of the controls that are available to images within LibreOffice Writer. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I've been Chris, thanks for watching. Consider checking out my Patreon if you'd like to donate to the channel, and I'll see you in my next video.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this brief LibreOffice Writer tutorial, I'd like to introduce you to styles within the context of the application. So what styles are when you're working in a document are basically a list of traits that you can apply to a block of text. Now that might be the title of a book, it might be a subtitle, it might be the heading for a chapter or a bunch of paragraphs, or it might be the paragraphs themselves. And when you apply these styles, a set of traits, as I mentioned, are applied along with that style. So by applying a style, it might change the font, it might change the font size, it might control the number of spaces between each line, and it might control whether the text is centered or left aligned. And you can find a bunch of titles by default up here in the top left where it says Apply Paragraph Style. You hover over this drop-down menu, and you can see all of the default styles. There aren't a huge amount by default that go in this menu to keep it manageable, but you can, of course, hit more styles to find new ones, or you can basically edit your own by hitting New Style, and then make all the changes to set that up. So I went ahead and created this test style here, which doesn't have anything to it right now. It's essentially the same as the text body or the default style. But if we wanted to change this, what we would have to do is actually edit a block of text to have some new changes to it. So we can say change the font to anything over here. Let's say Segoe Black, UI Black is the font. We can change the font size to 20. And now, if I go back into the style menu, you'll notice when you hover over each item that it has a little extra drop-down menu to the right. You click on that and you hit Update to Match Selection. And now what that means is that this style now has copied the styling from this block of text. So we basically took how one block of text shows, and now we have it available to apply to anything. So I can select this subtitle here and apply the same thing, the font of 20 and Segoe UI Black as the font name. And that's pretty helpful because you can create your own styles as much as you want. Now, if I wanted to use the default styles, that's perfectly fine and probably recommended for beginners. So here I have a book title, which trying to imply there that this part is supposed to be the title of the book. So we can select title from the drop-down menu. You can see it's got centering, Liberation Sans as the font, and 28 as the font size. Now we probably want to apply the subtitle to the subtitle block. So select what you want, choose subtitle from the the style drop-down list. And yeah, you get the idea. So here we can do a heading for a chapter. So using heading 1 or 2 is really common when you're talking about headings. And for the paragraph down here, we could simply leave it as the default style, but I'll actually change it to text body, which has a slight difference of increasing a little bit of space between the first and second and future lines. An alternate way that we can modify the styles that are in the list, is to basically change our paragraphs here. This one's already been set to text body, so if we change this to size 14 as the font, got to select the whole paragraph to do that. And now I hit update style, then that's going to change text body as the style. So now if I change this, let's say back to 12, which is what it was before, and reapply the text body, it's going to increase the size because we updated this style based on what this paragraph had. For now, I'll go ahead and return that to what was default. So if you want to see all of the styles that are available to you, you can click on the drop-down menu, go to More Styles. Alternatively, hitting F11 on your keyboard will toggle this Styles and Formatting window open for you. And you can see that there's a lot of extra ones that you can apply. Now, outside of the base styles, it's also possible to take styles from templates. So you can go up to the Styles drop-down menu and hit Load Styles, where you can select a template, such as the Modern Business Letter, and you can load in all of the styles available from that template. But at the core of the problem, what you need to understand about styles is that you can apply multiple attributes to a block of text simultaneously by using basically predefined attribute sets. And those attribute sets are referred to as styles. And using them can actually save you quite a bit of time. Because once you have a style set up in the styles drop down, you can simply apply that over and over again without having to worry about selecting the font, selecting the size, coloring the background, or the text alignment, or anything else like that, because it's all stored into one single style. So I've been Chris. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this to be a little bit helpful, and feel free to check out my Patreon. I'll see you in my next video.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this short video I'm going to be showing you how to change your page margins when you're working within LibreOffice Writer. So in order to do this, once you have a document booted up, you can go to the Format tab, look for where it says Page in the drop-down menu, click on that, and then you're going to be brought to the Page Style dialog on the Page tab specifically. And if you look down, you can see the margins, which by default are set to 0.79 inches. But if you want to change that to say 1 inch, you simply select the text in there and change it to the basically the length that you want for the margins. For instance, 1 inches on all sides is pretty standard. And once you're done with that, you can go ahead and hit apply and OK. And as you can see, the document automatically updates to reflect that change. So hope this helped you out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my future videos. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'd like to introduce you to headers and footers within LibreOffice Writer. So a header is basically a block of text that will go at the top of your page inside of your document, and the footer is likewise a block of text that will go at the bottom of your document. And often inside of these headers and footers, you'll include things like your name, the page number, and other fields which may be automatically calculated and carry over from page to page, where it helps you keep track of basically what's going on in your document, who the creator of the document was, maybe what the title of the document is. Kind of whatever information you want to go in those headers and footers, you're free to do. Just know that by default, a header will apply to every page of your document, and so will a footer. It is, of course, possible to change that to make it not show on specific pages of your document as well. So in order to add a header into our document is quite simple. All we need to do is click above this invisible line. You see these two corners. That's marking the difference between our page margin and our document. So if we click above that invisible line, you'll see this header default style pop up. If we click on the plus, then it will immediately add a header. And if you have a drop down, you'll also see maybe something like add header. But one of those two things will get you a new header at the top of your page. You can see that now it's got its own corners, basically marking the boundaries of this header. Generally, if you're working on a school assignment, it would be either centered or on the far left. So I'm going to go ahead and hit align right so that all of our text in the header is pushed to the right side of our page. Now we could start typing information that we want to show on basically every page. For instance, a name and maybe page numbering. So we could say page number of number. But the problem is, if we just type it as a character, it's going to show exactly the same thing on every page. So let's create another page here and we can see, yeah, it's the same thing there. How do we make it so that it takes the actual page number and writes it here for us on every single page? Well, in order to do that, we use fields. So for the page number of number, the total pages, we can select this text, or if you just have a cursor, that's fine as well. Go up to this option on the main toolbar that says Insert Field. Click that and go to Page Count. Select that, and you'll see in gray text the page number. And I didn't type 2, it just automatically figured out that there was 2 pages in this document. Likewise, if we go to the page number over here, or what should be the page number, select that, go up to the Fields option, and do Page Number. It's going to give us page X of X, where X is equal to the proper number, like the current page or the total number of pages. So if I scroll down to the second page, we can confirm this. It knows that there is 2 pages in the document, and it knows that we're on the second page. And I'll prove this one more time by doing a Control-Enter to insert a page break, create a new page, and now it's page 3 of 3, page 2 of 3, page 1 of 3. So there's a lot of advantages here in that you never have to actually go back and manually type this in. No matter how big you make your document, it's already figured out for you. Likewise, you could add in some extra fields like the date, kind of whatever you want to do, and this would, I believe, modify as you reopen the file up and save it and print it again. It would calculate that for you as well. So, as for footers, it essentially works the same way. If we just kind of go down here to the bottom and click below the content line, you'll see footer default style. The only difference is this shows at the bottom of a page while a header shows at the top of a page. So I'm going to go ahead and hit plus to create ourselves a footer. And maybe with this, I will center it horizontally and we can just put in a copyright or something like that. Now, I'm not actually going to go dig up the key for the copyright symbol, but yeah, you can find it if you need it. So let's just say copyright 2016, Chris Tutorials. I'm actually not really worried about copyright if you're wondering, so yeah, feel free to share my content wherever you feel like it. And yeah, so we have that as the footer now, and if we scroll down to the second page, we can see the same information pops up there again, and the same information pops up there again. So if you want information to appear at the top and bottom of every page, this would be how you do it. Okay, so here's a bit of a bonus because I know a lot of people are going to be asking this. If you want to remove the header or the footer from a single page in your document, such as the first page, what you can do is hit 11 on your keyboard to open up the Styles and Formatting window. And look between these options here. You're looking for page styles, so make sure you have your cursor selected in the page you want to change the style on. And these page styles basically determine a lot of base information for a page, like whether or not it should have a header or footer. One of the types that actually does have a missing header and footer by design is first page. So if we take this first page that has the default style and we change it to first page by double clicking on it, you can see immediately, bam, header's gone, footer's gone, but it still belongs on the other pages because those are still using the default style, which does have headers and footers changed on. Now, you can, of course, edit your own page styles, and there's a lot more into it, but that's a story for another video. So I've been Chris. Thank you for watching this video on LibreOffice Writer headers and footers. If you found this helpful, consider checking out my Patreon account, and I will see you in my next video. Hello everybody, Chris here, and today I wanted to show you how you can make a table of contents for any ebook you're going to write inside of Microsoft Word 2013, which is pretty much the standard software you use to do it. Okay, so you'll see here already we have a fake cover page right there. A page break, which brings us down to the area where we're going to put a table of contents. Right there, that's just a heading. And then we have another page break, and we have the main content of our book, the Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. Now, you will notice that the Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3 heading is actually set to be a heading style within Microsoft Word. And you can do that on the Home tab. You just select the text you want and, choose the style you want the text to be. And if you make it a heading 1 or heading 2 or any kind of heading really, what will happen is that in the bookmarks for Microsoft Word, if you go to insert hyperlink, it'll automatically have the headings referenced as an automatic bookmark, which you can reference in your table of contents. And that's what we're going to want to be getting at and referencing. Now, we have to do this manually if you're going to be uploading to most sites online. You can't just use the table of contents automatic thing here. Although if we did put an automatic table, it would say the Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3 because it's pulling in all the headings. But the problem is the second you convert a .docx to other kinds of formats that ebooks generally need to be in, like a .epub, the formatting goes all haywire. So this is something we need to do manually. So we have our headings down below, and what we're going to do is type in the same name of the headings manually, and we'll do that for each chapter. So Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. Then what you got to do is select the text you want to basically add a hyperlink, because all table of contents really is a bunch of hyperlinks and possibly page numbers that lets you navigate and link to the text. Well, also tells you what's going to be in the book as well. So if we go to the Insert tab and you have the text selected, which is going to be turning into a hyperlink, as long as you have your Microsoft Word kind of maximized, you should see the link section and it should be fully expanded to include hyperlink. Although if for instance, your Microsoft Word page is shrunk, you might not see the full links section here, so that could get kind of confusing. But what we want to get at is hyperlink. And then we go to place in this document, and as I mentioned earlier, it automatically adds the heading bookmarks over here to the heading section. So we already got Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. All we got to do is select that, add a hyperlink, and make that Chapter 1, hyperlink, Chapter 2, hyperlink, Chapter 3. Now, it doesn't need to be chapters. You can also do introductions, conclusions, any other point in the book where you just have a heading in there. Of course, if you wanted to make a manual bookmark that doesn't have a heading for whatever reason, you can basically just select the text you want it to basically make a hyperlink to, hit bookmark, create a name for the bookmark. Like for instance, if we type this in here, named hyperlink, then this area, the table of contents, which is actually just this bookmark, would be referenceable separate from the heading bookmarks as well. But yep, that's all we really need. Headings for your chapter names and any other section where you do want to have an automatic hyperlink. And then manually type in the text, add a hyperlink, and give it the Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3 that you need. So that's all there is to it for basically setting up your table of contents for any ebook. And it should convert into any formats out there that you're going to need on sites like Amazon.com and Smashwords. So, I've been Chris. I hope you found this particularly useful, and if you did and you want to make a contribution, you can go to patreon.com/ChrisTutorials. Aside from that, thank you very much for watching. I'll have some of the links to my own ebooks if you're interested in the description down below, and I'll catch you all later. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this LibreOffice Writer video, I'd like to show you how to use changes within the context of your document. So what a change is when we're talking about LibreOffice Writer is an edit that's been made to your document that can actually be seen by other people as you pass them that document, but not seen in the way that typing normally is. A change is listed with a date, time, and the person who created the edit, and has the ability for someone else to accept that change and finalize it. So when you're passing a document from person to person, it helps to have the change mode enabled so that other people can confirm what you are doing, what you're changing around in the document before finalizing everything and maybe sending it back to you or sending it to a boss, a superior, a teacher, anyone else. So whenever you want to enable change mode, you have to go up here on the main toolbar where it says record changes, or you can alternatively hit Control, Shift, and E on your keyboard at the same time. So whenever you have change mode enabled and you start typing, it's going to change how your text displays on the screen. For instance, if I type change mode enabled, you can kind of see that it's almost been changed to a hyperlink, but it's not actually a hyperlink. It's a background color change. And it also has the tooltip that says it was inserted by me, Chris's Tutorials, at the date and time. So if I want to accept that, or anyone else viewing the document wants to accept that change, they can right-click it and go to Accept Change. Likewise, you can delete information, and that is also a change. So instead of the information being completely gone from the document, it's kind of giving you a preview of what would be removed if the change is accepted. So we have this deleted marker, and whenever somebody wants to go ahead and accept that, you can hit Accept Change or Reject Change. Reject Change, of course, is going to knock it back to normal, and hitting Next Change moves you to the next modification in the document. So you can move ideally pretty fast through all the edits in a large document that's been made so that you can approve everything in a swift manner. Now, one thing to note is that it does say who edited the document last. Now, how does OpenOffice actually know who was the one editing the document? Well, if you go to Tools and Options, you'll have a field for user data. And that this user data means whenever this computer account or computer is using LibreOffice Writer, include this information as the defaults. Now, when you're hovering over the changes, it's going to put the first name, last name, but there's also other information which can be used elsewhere within OpenOffice, including street, city, state, zip, and email addresses. So, good thing to note, especially if you like to use autofill fields inside of the program. But we can go ahead and hit OK there, save it, and if we were to ship this document to somebody else, they would be opening it up and see it in exactly the same manner as we have here. So they'd be able to basically make changes, and you can go right-click Accept Change or right-click Reject Change. In that case, it prevents the extra information from being added. Now, one more thing we can mention here is that sometimes you want a document to be protected from random people making the changes, especially if you're in a large workplace. So let's say that you wanted only the heads of a certain department, like marketing or accounting, to be able to make changes to this document. You would go up to File, Properties, and in these tabs, the properties of the document, you can go over to the Security tab, where it will say Record Changes, and protect that with a password. So now if I was to say type in, let's just use the password eggs, EGGS, hit OK. So back in the main document at this point, because Record Changes is checked and a password has been set, the only thing a user without the password can do is suggest changes to the document. So this is a suggested change, and it's like we're typing into the document, but we can't actually edit. We can't edit that. We can't accept a change, and we also can't go back to normal typing mode unless we hit Record Changes. So if I type in eggs here, then that basically unlocks the document once again, so I can have Record Changes mode turned off, and then once again I can accept the changes and reject the changes. But without that password, the only thing a user can do is suggest changes to the document. They can't have a say on any final changes, which can be really useful in a larger group or larger organization. So that's all for this video. I've been Chris. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, consider donating to my Patreon account, and I'll see you in my next video.